A to Z Mysteries, Book Number 9, The Invisible Island, by Ron Roy. Chapter 7. Josh scratched his knee, then his neck, then his left elbow. "Guess I'd better buy some calamine lotion," he said. "We're almost at the supermarket," Dink said. He glanced over his shoulder. "What are you looking at?" Ruth Rose asked. Dink shrugged. "Nothing, I guess. I just keep thinking about that creepy guy in the boat." "Do you think he recognized us?" Josh asked. "I mean, if we couldn't see his face, maybe he couldn't see ours." "I hope you're right," Dink said. "If the guy in the boat was the counterfeiter, he could be anyone, even someone we know." "Oh, great, Dinkus," Josh said. "Now I'm going to have nightmares." The kids walked into the supermarket and headed for the pharmacy. Mrs. Hernandez looked up and smiled. "Hi, kids, what do you need?" she asked. Josh scratched his knee. "Do you have any calamine lotion?" he asked. Mrs. Hernandez came out from behind her counter. She gave Josh a once-over. "That's poison ivy, all right," she said. She took a pink bottle from a shelf and handed it to Josh. "That's my last bottle. Ron Pinkowski came in yesterday and bought up my other 3. Josh paid Mrs. Hernandez and thanked her. Then the kids left the store. They sat on a bench while Josh dabbed calamine lotion on his itchy spots. "I wonder why Mr. P needs this stuff," Ruth Rosa said. "Didn't he tell us he stays away from poison ivy?" "He wasn't scratching when we saw him yesterday," Dink said. Suddenly, Josh jumped to his feet. "Oh my gosh, it's him!" Dink looked around. "Who's him?" "Mr. Pinkowski," Josh said. "He bought the calamine lotion because he's got poison ivy. And he's got poison ivy because he was on Squaw Island hiding his counterfeit money." Dink shook his head. "If Mr. P has poison ivy, he could have gotten it anywhere. Maybe he's hiding a printing press in one of his empty fish tanks," Josh said. "Josh, what are you talking about?" Ruth Rose asked. "It's perfect," Josh said. "He sells bait to fool people, but he's really getting rich making phony money." "That's crazy," Dink said. "Just because Mr. P bought calamine lotion doesn't mean he's a counterfeiter." Josh screwed the bottle cap on and shoved the lotion into a pocket. "I'm not crazy," he said. "He's tall, so he's probably got big feet, right?" Ruth Rose opened her mouth, but Josh cut her off. "And he lives right on the river," Josh went on. "He's got boats. He knows Squaw Island is the perfect place to stash money. It has to be him." Dink looked at Ruth Rose. "What do you think?" he asked her. "It could have been Mr. Pinkowski in the boat," Ruth Rose said. "But he is our friend. I can't believe he's a counterfeiter." "I can't either," Dink said. "Well, I can," Josh said. He scratched his stomach. "Let's go back to the bait shop and see if he has poison ivy." "But how will we know?" Ruth Rose asked. Josh grinned. "He bought 3 bottles of calamine lotion," he reminded her. "He'll be pink." Dink laughed. "Okay, let's go back to the bait shop," he said. "You look for poison ivy. I want to see if Mr. P's feet are as big as those footprints." Chapter 8. "Well, you were right about one thing," Ruth Rose whispered to Josh. "Mr. Pinkowski does have big feet." "Yeah, but they still don't look as big as those footprints we saw," Dink whispered back. The kids were hiding behind the bushes near Ron's bait shop. Ron was standing in his yard, rubbing a cloth over a small green rowboat. "Look at that boat," Josh said. "It could be the one we saw out at the island." "But I don't see any calamine lotion on him," Dink said. And he's not scratching. Just then, a black car pulled into the driveway. Ron waved as a man in a dark suit stepped out of the car. The man waved back, then leaned into the car and pulled out a box. On its side were written 4 words, "Happy Heart Dog Food." Josh gasped. "Do you see?" "Shh," whispered Ruth Rose. The kids watched as the man handed Ron the box. Ron turned and carried it into his shed. When Ron came out, he handed the box back to the stranger. The man put it on the seat of his car, then took out a checkbook. Quickly, he scribbled out a check and handed it to Ron. Finally, he climbed back in his car and drove away. "Check out the license plate," Ruth Rose said. Dink read the plate. B-E-N-T. Bent? What's that mean? He asked. "Who cares?" Josh said. "Mr. P just sold that guy a box full of counterfeit money. Let's go tell Officer Fallon." "Josh, that box could have been full of dog food," Dink said. "Think us think," Josh said. "Someone hid fake money in those same dog food boxes on Squaw Island. I say one of those 2 guys is the counterfeiter." "Josh could be right," Ruth Rose pointed out. "But before we go see Officer Fallon, maybe we can find out who that other man is." "How?" Dink asked. "Let's ask at the gas station," Ruth Rose said. "Mr. Hawley might know who drives a black car with Bent on the license plate." When the kids reached the gas station, Mr. Hawley was nowhere in sight. Then Dink heard someone whistling. The tune was coming from under a banged-up red pickup truck. "Mr. Hawley?" Dink said. "Is that you?" A round, grease-smudged face popped out from under the truck. "Howdy," Mr. Hawley said, grinning at the kids. "You got car trouble?" "Sort of," Ruth Rose said. "Do you know who owns a car with Bent on the license plate?" Mr. Hawley stood up and wiped his hands on a rag. "Why is the car bent?" he said, winking at Dink. Dink laughed. "No, but we needed to find the driver," he said. "I found some money," Ruth Rose said. "We think it might be his." "Sounds like those new folks," Mr. Hawley said. "Mr. and Mrs. Worden Bent. A few weeks ago, they rented a small house on Fox Lane. I put a set of spark plugs in that snazzy Lincoln of theirs." "Fox Lane," Dink said, giving Josh a look. "That's over by the river." "Righto," Mr. Hawley said. "Nice view of the water. Now, if you'll excuse me, this old truck needs my help." The kids thanked Mr. Hawley and left the gas station. "We know who the guy is now," Dink said, "but we still can't prove he or Mr. P is a counterfeiter." "But the box," Josh started to say. "We don't know what was in it," Dink reminded him. "Right," Ruth Rose said. "Why don't we go to Mr. Bent's house and wait for him to come home? Maybe we can get a peek at the box when he goes in his house." "Okay, but let's be careful," Dink said. "I don't want to end up locked in that vault on Squaw Island."